A very good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We are back yet with now another series. Let me tell you some new things. The new committees have been constituted and I have again been assigned to be the chairman of Internal Audit Standards Board. Additionally, I am the chairman of Committee on Management Accounting and vice chairman of CP Committee, Continuing Professional Education Committee. Ladies and gentlemen, we have had a very power-packed, a very great year, robust year, where we have to do so many programs to ensure that our technical skills are honed up to the greatest level. Today's seminar is specially designed to ensure that it be the first in its own series. We are holding a series now on technology as an enabler of internal audit. Last year we had a full series on mentoring SMPs. So now we have come to technology as an enabler. And today we have three very great speakers. We have Madam Sandhya, Madam Bhavani, Mr. Gautam. I'll read out their details, resumes also to you the detailed biodatas. They are all people who have done and spent their entire life in industry, improvising the process and putting in the right perspective what is expected of the internal audit function. Let me first of all start. Give me a second. I'll just read their biodatas and then come with my keynote address. And then the entire dais shall be open for these three warriors, the warriors which shall conquer all doubts, all problems, all inhibitions which you have in your mind and put you at a path where you can always progress and serve this country and society at large. Let me tell you, we chartered accountants have one thing in common. We internal auditors have one thing in common. We understand to work by circumstances. I am reminded of a couplet which I shall share with you. The couplet says, an internal auditor telling another professional, he says, कुछ तो फर्क है तेरी और मेरी तालीम में, कुछ तो फर्क है तेरी और मेरी तालीम में, तूने उस्तादों से सीखा है, हमने हालातों से सीखा है. We learned the circumstances, and now I would go for the detailed biodata of the three speakers, revered speakers. Just for a second. The first topic of the day is use of technology in internal audit. It shall be taken by Madam C.A. Bhavani Joyce. She is Associate Vice President and Head Internal Audit and SOX of Infosys. I have met Madam personally and have seen her great insight to ensure that the profession of internal audit remains at the highest level. She is a high-performing risk and assurance professional and currently she is heading the internal audit and SOX of Infosys Limited. She has a demonstrable record of achievements in formulating and implementing integrated approaches to governance, risk and internal controls, as well as measurement and improvement within large private sector and not-for-profit organizations. She combines high levels of commercial acuity and systems knowledge with advanced planning capabilities in analyzing strategic priorities and delivering precise value-added solutions. She is a very resourceful and politically astute individual, offering strong business leadership and exceptional influential skills at C-level and across multidisciplinary, local and global levels. The second speaker of the day is none other than Ms. Sandhya Sriram. Her topic is practical applications of technology in audit. She is Vice President Finance, Wipro Enterprises. I know Madam from the days when I was the chairman of the Committee for Members of Industry. In 2016, we awarded her the best rising star, and today she is a well-established star, and she is now Vice President of Finance in Wipro Enterprises. She is the global head of audit and risk for Wipro Enterprises. Before this, she was the Wipro Technologies as the global head of finance for consumer business unit. Prior to joining Wipro, Sandhya worked closely to a decade and a half with Unilever in various roles, including business partnering, controllership, shared services, IT, project management, supply chain finance, etc. She was also placed in India's top 100 women in finance by AIWMI in March 19. She has been awarded now, the award which I gave her, that is the second one. She has been awarded by the Institute of Chartered Accountants of India twice as CA CFO, which was given by me, and then as CA Professional Achiever. Sandhya was placed in the top 50 young leaders of India out of 27,000 plus participants by Economic Times in 2011 when she was at the mid of her career. An alumna of ICAI, she also secured an All India rank in Foundation, Inter and Final Examination. She is a regular speaker at national and international conferences of ICAI and CFO Forum of various topics. She is holding a lot of passion as the key to professional success and professional gratification, and is always ready to serve the Mother Institute whenever she is called for. Let me first of all put my sincere thanks to all the three speakers, because the committees were made on Monday. I could only speak to them on Wednesday, but in spite of their busy schedule, when the name of ICAI came, they were all well ready and assumed the role of speaker in this program. Third topic of the day is use of technology in internal audit. It shall be taken by none other than Mr. Gautam Pense, who is also a chartered accountant. He is Executive Vice President, Internal Audit with Vodafone Idea Limited. Gautam, a chartered accountant by profession, passed out in 1998. He has 22 years of post-qualification experience. He started his journey with the CA firms and gained experience in internal audit, statutory audit and industry line function roles in finance through secondment arrangements. In his 8-year journey, he traveled a lot for work within and outside India, got opportunities to work in different industries in manufacturing and service sectors alike. While experiment with work profiles, he realized his calling towards internal auditing and ever since stuck to it. From August 2006 till January 2020, he was part of the Aditya Birla Group corporate audit function, leading internal audit delivery in multiple businesses like telecom, textile, chemical, insulator, pulp, carbon black, microfinance and cement. I will pause here and let you know that when Madam Sandhya was awarded, at that time the chief guest of the jury, the chief chairman of the jury was none other than Mr. Kumar Mangala Birla. In addition, he also led IT audit team and was responsible for functions learning and development agenda. Since January 2020, he got transferred to Vodafone Idea Limited as Aditya Birla Group and Vodafone Group partnership. In his current role, he is responsible for internal audit delivery in the joint venture company, reporting into the audit committee of the board. He describes himself as an experimental auditor who likes to question the status quo when needed and try out different things in order to enhance work outcomes. He has successfully led and participated in business projects which in turn have helped him to change perception of businesses towards internal audit. Aside of work, he is passionate about football, still plays whenever he gets an opportunity. You can figure out his very nice figure which he has created by being a very fit gentleman, a long distance runner, sometimes who find it difficult to keep his desire in check for improving his amateur acting and photography skills. So I take this opportunity to welcome all three of them. The institute, our mother institute, is always lucky that we have such people who could always come ahead and serve the institute whenever we need. So ladies and gentlemen, now I come on to my keynote speech so that we could go ahead and ask the speakers to speak. Just give me a second, I'll just share my screen. 1 second. I told you we're on a series on technology as enablers of internal audit. So the first question that arises is how technology is changing the business. The development in information technology are not only changing the way business are being conducted. That's a good part, the bright part of it. But along with that bright part comes the increased and associated risks and changing the requirement of proper controls. You all remember that due to pandemic, pandemic came last year and it created havoc. I'm reminded of a couplet. The couplet says, खुदा की कुदरत का अजब नजारा देखा, खुदा की कुदरत का अजब मंजर देखा, जमाना घर में कैद था और पंछी खुले आसमां पे उड़े. Please understand, all were in captivity, but IT kept us moving. But in this period, the rate of fraud also increased because certain people who are not aware with the risks, who are not aware of the dangers of IT, try to come in. Now, information technology, what is it? Is revolutionizing the nature and scope of worldwide communications. You have to make strategies so that the work becomes more robust, more error-free. Changing the business processes. The processes are well defined. Their guarding has become more easy. Erasing the traditional boundaries of the organization internally between departments and externally with the suppliers and customers and redefining it. The boundaries have been vanishing. You have a clear-cut playground where each and every participant can come and show his valor. Very, very important. So this demonstrates the power of IT, both as a driver and as an enabler of management processes and strategies. Now, what is the role of internal audit in digitization? Just a second. In case the company has an overall digitization strategy, it is very important because it is one of the prerequisites. The internal audit can also provide assurance that the strategy is on track and meets business objectives. All of you are well aware that internal audit essentially is a management function. So when it is a management function, the most important issue is to provide assurance that all business objectives are met. So this is given when the digitization is there. Internal auditors can also help develop an information system to provide the board with mandated financial information, industry insights, risks and control analysis, and the integrity of the financial reporting system. Very, very important. When it comes to digital ground, you need to be very sure that whatever inferences you draw, whatever queries you are taking in, or whatever leaks you are trying to plug in, they are in the right perspective, as the parameters are too long, too large. Internal audit also analyzes the risk of disruptive technology and cloud technologies, balance risks and benefits in a competitive landscape, as well as its impact on customers, stakeholders, and employees. Very, very important. Identify the risk and ensure that if risk comes again in a different phase, it is immediately mitigated. Disruptive technologies have created so many new organizations, but at the same time, it has plundered so many well-going businesses. We have to ensure that going concern in the same vigor continues. Now, what is the impact of digitization on internal audit? First, it nurtures the internal collaboration and networking externally. Both internal collaboration and networking all across, they are all synchronized. Second, in addressing and managing existing and emerging risks using enhanced efficiency, and in auditing key business process controls more effectively. You could read it otherwise or this way. The inference drawn would be same. If you start from auditing key business process, you understand that you have to address and manage existing and emerging risks, and you have to ultimately collaborate, you have to ultimately synchronize the internal collaboration and network essentially. So it is such a thing which will help the business grow in a very robust fashion. Now, the last topic of the day, technology as enabler for internal audit. How does technology help us? The increased use of tools and techniques to get big data sources and provides deeper insights. You would have read that there was a lady in Udaipur, she has created a software where in half a second you can do the work which auditor does for 3 months. Yes, exception reporting, bringing out data analysis and bringing out something which is of concern, which is of risk to us. Facilitate continuous top-down risk assessments around the company's process and control environments. A total continuous perpetual movement. Review the consistency of process by which management may project for current and future projects. Very, very important. The process consistency is very important. Whether there is a leveraging through other points, whether there are certain loopholes which needs to be plugged. Enable early detection of frauds. If there are frauds, errors, or regulatory non-compliances, stopping litigations, unwanted litigations or penalties, immediately that can be brought forth to the audit committee or to the management and reduces the risks of auditing and monitoring costs. Now, it also helps us in undertaking deep analysis into key risk areas by analyzing the key data. When the data is totally checked, when it is totally verified, then you understand the key risk areas which may emerge. Even warning signals may be helpful. It also helps in alignment of strategic goals to risk management practices. Yes, there are certain strategic goals and certain risk management practices. Both can be aligned and both can move together. It can also increase overall efficiency of audits. The overall efficiencies of audit and working in the management function can be very thankful, can be very beneficial. So, ladies and gentlemen, I now come to the last slide of the day, which is thank you. The best part of the thing is that now we have to listen to the three of the very learned speakers who have took out a Saturday evening today's a leave, but in spite of that, they have taken a Saturday evening to come and speak to their professional brethren.
I can't share couplets like Nandaji, but I can share, saying in Tamil where we say, Ponnu vekkara edathula poo vekkradhu, meaning where you can keep, instead of gold, you can keep a flower. So that's all that I am here to offer against what Bhavani has presented. Thank you, Bhavani. You've set a great context and you've made my job in this session very, very easy. I'm going to cover some of the practical aspects of how technology is being used in internal audit. And I want to start with jargons that we tend to use. So the way technology has become in today's world is like Shashi Tharoor's English. We seem to have we understood and made life far more complex. And many times when we look at technology, we feel like, oh my God, this is just too much, or, this is a different world, or I'm not part of that world, or, we've really, if you look at it, perspicacity is just being shrewd. So most of what we do in technology is just an extension of what we already know, what we already can do. But many times these are just jargonized for the effect. And what I'm trying to do today is to unjargonize some of the technology aspects in internal audit, which I call as ABC of technology. So I want to start with A. If I have to really simplify, what are the places where technology plays a role in audit at a very, very high level? Of course, there are many, many more applications, but very high level, the audit task digitization. How do I manage the life cycle of the audit? Audit process digitization, some of the examples that Bhavani gave. What can be the scope I can cover? How can I digitize the audit process? And how do I bring intelligence and whether it is AI, whether it is cognitive, and we'll come to some of these later. But how do I bring intelligence into my process? So that's broadly what technology tries to influence in the audit paradigm. Now, having said that, what are we trying to do? So let's get back to the basics. This is the B, which is we are trying to be a better auditor, better audit execution, better prediction, better insights, better process resilience. Now, here is my favorite example, and I'm going to take it again. If some of you have heard me say this before, I'm sorry for the repetition. I'm not sure, since it's not interactive, I can't ask you questions, but what we have here is the first ever written language in the history of humankind, as per the book of Homo sapiens. Now, according to that book, writing was, which really paved the way for social order and whatever we are today, was invented by the Sumerians between 3500 BC to 3000 BC. And can anybody guess what was the first recorded name in history? The first recorded name in history was Kushim. Kushim was not a ruler, not a prophet, not a great poet. It was the name of an accountant. Our history as accountants dates back to origin of written record in humanity. And over the years, what we have done really well is evolved, adapted, excelled, be better, be the better auditor. And whatever tools have come our way in the process, we have used those tools. We have excelled in those tools. We have enhanced them and taken them to the next level. And IT is just one other tool of such nature. So before we start on the IT journey, obviously it is important that we look at our capability, the critical capability for tech. Now this may again look at a little bit of jargonish, but this is a IT analytic, audit analytics which Deloitte had developed, where it said that we could be initial, developing, defined, advanced, leading. Now, I'm not going to get into these details. It is only like the wheel that Bhavani presented. Before we start our journey, we should see which quadrant we are. So then we know what the journey is. And we should also know what is the broad spectrum. So this is a PwC classification where they've said Dynamics is like really leading on IT. So according to PwC, based on their survey at that point in time, only 19% of the audience are, of the people that they surveyed are Dynamics. 54% are beginners. So if you are just beginning your journey on how you're going to bring tech into internal audit, there are half the population that are with you. So there is nothing wrong with that. Having said that, the survey also said that the ability to develop new services, be able to add value is far higher in the top block when compared to the bottom block, and therefore we have to be acutely aware on the journey. Having said that, how do we build the journey? Now, the starting point to any technology intervention which we want to make is data. Now, many times people say that, first you have to take a software, I have to find some audit related software, I have to implement that software, and then life will solve itself. No problem will solve itself until the data is in order. So anytime that we want to make a tech intervention in the internal audit process, we have to identify the data components. So there are challenges with data. Sometimes data resides in multiple places, system constraints, some reports you can take. Many ERPs do not have certain, we may have certain other tools, home built tools. When somebody designs a system, they may not have thought through how different data is going to be used. For example, if you want to do a audit of logs, how many times people have accessed the log, the person who has designed that particular log should have taken that as a stamped field, and that should be accessible for you at the time of audit. Otherwise, you'll never be able to do an audit log. So sometimes there are multiple system constraints. Sometimes all the data elements are not captured completely. So if you have a chain of things to check, and some of it we'll cover later, there will be a broken chain and certain parts of his data is not captured in the system at all. There are confidentiality implications, and sometimes the tools and systems that we have do not allow us to look at multiple data together. So before we embark on our tech journey, we have to see what is the data set we are working with and how do we enhance that data set. So the starting point for that is one second. Slide is taking some time to come up. Yes. So the starting point is data design clarity. Now, what I mean by data design clarity is that we don't necessarily need everything to start work. Now, one of the, I think it was Einstein who said that if I'm given, say, 1 hour to do a job, 55 minutes I will spend in doing the design of what the problem is, and 5 minutes I will spend in solving the problem. So really the design of what output we are expecting is most important to embark on our data journey. The second one is prototyping. Bhavani spoke about it. Any intervention we want to make in audit, whether it is in the analytics space, whether it is in the forensic space, we have to build small prototypes, see success, and then from there build on. The third aspect is really outcome orientation. Now, in LinkedIn, I happen to read Sandeep Ramesh. He's in the marketing team in Google, and he posts quite frequently on LinkedIn. And one of the places he was saying that, when we were children, our mother, when she used to make us eat, say, okra, she'll never say okra has vitamins, okra has this health benefit, that health benefit. She used to say, bhindi khao, max mein 100 mark aega. Really, what is the outcome? And this is used in multiple ways in marketing. They say, use the deodorant, get the girl. They don't say use the deodorant and then you smell nice. So really the marketing guys have caught that concept of outcome orientation really well, and we as accountants need to see what is the final outcome that the data is going to deliver. Now, again, influence business process change. Getting a good analytical output, data output in any audit journey is only when the business process also moves. So the director in the company, in one of the companies I used to work for, always used to say that we can never put 5th degree automation on 1st degree processes. So which means that we need to be able to influence, and because audit is an influence role, audit has a tremendous scope and ability to thought lead. And I think our Gautam is going to speak about it later. We can thought lead the direction of the business processes, and we have to play an active role in influencing business processes so that we are able to get the right outcomes from a data point of view. And of course, the last piece is a research mindset. And Bhavani said you have the importance of lifelong learning. And we have to have that research orientation to get the right data set. Now, then I move on to the next one, which is how do we, now that we have the right data set, how do we use it? So it's the expanding our horizon to wherever we can use what we are creating. We can use it in risk assessment. We can use it in planning and testing, reporting, dashboarding, multiple places. So for us, I think the key is the horizon that we are willing to create and we are willing to expand. Now, I want to move on to F, which is anomaly detection, forensics, fraud detection. Now, I want to spend some time on anomaly detection because for us to build, many times they say that for you to build a strong IT-enabled audit team, the key skill is to know Python, know R coding, know yes, those are relevant skills, but really the key skill is to know how to identify anomalies in the process, create a flagging mechanism, whether fraud or exception monitoring, and be able to deliver outcomes. So our orientation, business orientation to detect anomalies is the starting point of leading into an automation journey. I know it's a little bit of a contrarian view because anomaly detection is normally looked at as separate stream, but I feel that like Sumerians, we have to build from where we start, and our skill really lies in being able to think through what type of anomalies can occur. And I want to take some examples and spend a little time on this slide so that we, what I mean. So for example, I want to give some examples of fuzzy logic now, which is one of my F's. So what we define as similar, what do you want the system to flag as similar? So in say payment process, we can say that if two amounts are within 5% range of each other, please flag. That's a fuzzy logic. If you say if one amount is exactly the double of the other, then please flag. Fuzzy logic. The amount, if it starts with the same 4 digits, so I have 220 rupees and I have 2,202 rupees. So then please flag. So only by our own business acumen and experience and having seen these kind of processes, we will be in a position to determine what is the fuzzy logic that the system should look at. See, there are many tools available in the market where they have looked at these fuzzy logics, etc. They do throw some exceptions, but the intelligence is us. The other one, which I think many tools talk about, is Benford law. Anytime anybody comes and presents to you about anomaly detection, they'll all speak about how they use Benford's law. Benford's law is very simple. It's a law which says that in a particular, say a 0 to 9 series, the probability that a 1 will occur is so much. The probability that an 8 will occur is so much. So if there is and that's based on a large set of research that has been done, and then it tries to throw out saying versus the probability of the Benford's law, how much can the system do? Again, you don't need that architect to come and tell us Benford law. We are super qualified to apply that logic. Now, the other areas like fraud detection, one of the areas we look at is the invoice rounded off. Because normally fraudsters don't do 200.2. But when people are generating invoices from the system will just simply do 200.2. So those kind of things. Sometimes abnormal invoice value, volume activity. Sometimes vendors with returned or cancelled checks. So there are multitude of insights that we can generate from our own knowledge of anomaly detection, and that's what goes into building the system. So when we start our IT journey, we should not start system backward, but we should start knowledge forward. And how do we take our knowledge into the tool that we are building? I move on to G. What makes it good to great is really the power of the cognitive. Now, we spoke about all these logics, but the system has to be capable of processing these logics. So there, all of these tools of machine learning, NLP, predictive, etc. come. But I really want to simplify some of this. So, for example, there are one of the places where machine learning and natural language processing is very effectively used is in contract management. So, when there are hundreds and thousands of contracts to read, manually reading those contracts is very cumbersome and can be error prone, needs a lot of people, and is very repetitive in nature. So the machine can be taught to flag exceptions. So there are tools that could read the contract, flag off. So for example, say if the contract has say Sandhya in 5 places and Sandhya Shriram in 5 places, and if you teach the machine saying Sandhya and Sandhya Shriram is the same, then it will learn, and therefore next time it won't flag as an exception. But for example, it says Sandhya address Chennai, Sandhya address Bangalore. It comes in 2 places. That means that we are referring to 2 different Sandhyas and there is a confusion in the contract. So if you teach the machine to learn that exception, next time when it is flagging, it will flag that. So most of this is just common sense. But if you work with the ability of the machine to create scale, so it is the power of simple progression versus geometric progression. What we can do as humans is simple progression, and what the machine can do is geometric progression. So if we are able to feed our intelligence into the power of the cognitive, we will be able to deliver much outcomes of a much larger scale. And these are simple stuff. So another example which we normally pick up is, expense statements. Many companies today have stopped human beings checking expense statements. Over a period of time, by continuously looking at expenses, machines have learned on what type of exceptions can occur in expense statements, and therefore they're able to process those expense statements. Same logic can apply to audit. Similarly, BRS, for example, when people do forced match, there are a lot of tools that can help you validate whether the forced match has happened correctly or not. So there are multiple applications, tools available. Bhavani spoke about some of those tools. My only submission here is the good to great is really how we feed our knowledge into the power of the cognitive. Now, then comes the most important aspect, like how to train your dragon, which is your people. Now, purple people is a term that was pioneered by analytics expert Wayne Eckerson. Now, he argues that, our team members have to combine, the color spectrum. If you combine red and blue, purple comes. That's the spectrum color. So they're saying red are tech-speaking people and blue are business-speaking people. So how do we combine the knowledge of the tech-speaking people and the business-speaking people so we can create purple people? So now I have identified some 6 elements of what we need to build in our people to make them purple people. Now, starting, of course, like I've been continuously speaking through this past 20 minutes or so, is business proficiency. Very important. What we all bring to the table is our business understanding. The second is data intuition. Now, data intuition is inherently there in us, but some way we have not been, in the past, we have never had the requirement to express it in an explicit way like we have to express now. So for example, I spoke about those invoice logics. I think these are the type of exceptions that could happen. That is intuition. I know these exceptions can come. Now, ability of our people to be able to express their intuition. Basic programming skills. I do not, while it is desirable that, if we get a best of all breed who can, code also, and in many of these, murder serials, if you watch on Netflix, you'll have this forensic scientist who can do technology also, who can do forensics also, who can do everything, can code also, hack into any program. Yes, that is desirable, but that's not realistic, and that's not required also. Basic skills, what program to apply when? How do you use technology? It's enough. Data wrangling. Now, this is a very underestimated skill. Now, where the data resides, how do I bring the data together? How do I clean, blend, transform the data so that it can be of value? It's an important skill. Mathematics. Now, we've all learned a lot of math till we came into our CA, and once we got our jobs, we forgot our math. So, being able to go back to our basics, bring some statistical methods to the table, and of course, the most important to become purple people is the aptitude to continuously learn. So, really, when we are setting up on our information technology in audit journey, we have to start working on how do we bring the best of our people into the journey and how do we make them express themselves to create value to themselves and to the process. Now, I'm now going to get into a series of, various technology topics that are considered to be a bit esoteric, but are not as complicated as we think it to be. So the first one which everyone talks about is IoT, and it's really the strange thing, what is this? Now, we will come to the applications of IoT in a bit, but if our organization has charted a journey to go into IoT, the first step for us as auditors, internal auditors, is to check the resilience of the IoT design that the organization is embarking on. And again, it's not rocket science. Understand the architecture. And we all know we've done that. When we audit a particular plant, we first understand the manufacturing process. We understand what are the different stages, where the WIP comes, where it starts, where it ends. We have to apply that same knowledge into the business architecture. Most of the IoT projects that people embark on, sometimes there is so fuzzy architecture ownership. So they will say, I have this particular device in this machine, which tells me, when there is a failure point. So we ask them saying, okay, you've put an IoT device, where is the data? They'll say, no, but that machine is through some third party and that isn't some third party application and the data is with the third party. I will get a report from the third party, which means the architecture ownership is fuzzy. So some of these are by asking simple logical questions, we can find out whether the architecture is secure. Now, physical access, virtual security, Bhavani spoke about some of this. We really can play a role in asking the right questions. Now, the other bit is, and it's a good question to ask, saying, let's assume that your system is highly resilient on a certain IoT devices. What if it fails? What is your contingency plan? Now, these are simple questions we ask every day. But what happens is when someone uses a jargon saying IoT, so then we think that, okay, it is not my domain. It is some IT guy who has to do it. And therefore, as an internal auditor, I need external help. We don't need external help. We have all the knowledge that we need to tackle with these new technology animals, because we have done that in the past. We have ever been doing it. We just need to feel empowered to do that. I've called out other areas, storage, privacy implications. What data are you collecting? Is that right as per the privacy regulation of that country? Data retention. We always audit data retention when we look at any audit process. Same thing for IoT. If there are third party involved in the normal process where you have a subcontractor in a manufacturing process, we see how that subcontractor plays a role and how the control landscape is. Same way, if there's a third party in the IoT design, what is the participation? How does that influence the design? So, and I'm sharing this IoT more as an example that wherever some of these jargon technologies are being used, the role that audit can play is phenomenal, and that role to play is easy. Yes, we may need some help, we may need to do some reading, we may need understanding, but it is not complicated. Now, having said that, now where are the uses of this IoT? Now, this is where it is juxtaposing digital and physical. So I want to give an example. Now, what we do, and this is a Wipro example, what we've done is that for our fixed assets in our factories, we have tagged them with a small device. So it is like a classroom in some form, instead of the teacher coming to your desk and checking whether you are present or not. When the teacher calls out the name saying Sandhya, you put your hand up and say present, ma'am. So it is similar to that. When you put a small device on the fixed asset, and when the when you want to check whether the asset is there or not, you call the device, you ping the device, and it tells you it's present. Now, similarly, various industry line items, you have various WIPs to complete across the line. Lot of IoT devices, multiple companies use. Another really good place is stock take. Now, stock take, many companies are, and you'll have seen many of these videos, Amazon ka drone based stock take. The technology is very simple. It is the ability, like you go into a shopping mall, you've purchased a box and it goes through a scanner. And the scanner reads it and it knows that you bought a pack of chocolate and then it gives you the price of the chocolate. That's exactly what this drone based thing do. The drone flies around like a helicopter that our kids play with. There is a barcode or some sort of an identifier, a QR code or something on the carton, and it has a scanner which reads it and it knows that in this aisle there is a code for the aisle and there is a code for the box. So it says in this aisle, in this box, this is the item sitting. So it then goes and looks at your inventory data and then sees, okay, this is the book stock, this is the physical stock, compare, match. Now, another thing is where trucks are in transit, and some of these have very important implications, and we as internal auditors need to know what type of technology the organization is using. For example, if the organization is using shipment tracking, many companies do that. They put GPS on their trucks and they track whether the shipment has reached a customer or not. Then that's a direct way to do negative testing for revenue recognition. See, many times we do negative testing for revenue recognition where we go and check whether the material has actually reached the customer or not. How do we do it? We take the confirmation from the customer, check the date on which the customer is confirmed, and then we see before 31st or after 31st, and then we say, okay, now this is a negative revenue to be reversed. Now, but then if the company has invested in a shipment tracking mechanism in their supply chain department, you can track where the truck was as on 31st March 12 p.m. And then you know that, okay, the truck has not reached a customer or has reached a customer. So you know your cases for negative testing, or you know what you need to reverse. So a lot of the technology that the business uses, which may look seemingly irrelevant for audit, actually can be used for internal audit also. And that is where our application of how we, first of all, feeling comfortable with what these technologies are, and our application of that technology becomes very relevant. Now, the next K is knowledge management. Now, the most underrated and the most important technology journey that we have to embark on the minute we in any function, not just internal audit, is knowledge management. A lot of knowledge gets lost. So if you see our working papers, even if we say I have digitized working papers, what does that mean? Somebody has created some Excel sheets and uploaded it in some system. Now, who is going to open that Excel sheet and ever going to look at what that person has done? So our knowledge management has to have, to start with, a very robust archival system. Now, this is a good place for technology in intervention for every internal auditor, where we have to create a robust, for example, I have put a process here. So when I do an audit of secondary transportation, this is from the tool we use for audit, it automatically asks saying, did you look at freight for returns? Now, how did that knowledge come? Because at some point in time, we knew that there is an onward freight and there is a return freight. So therefore, in the knowledge management, there is an archival which is tagged saying, whenever you look at freight, you have to look at return freight as well. So when you create that process, automatically that knowledge is archived. Then retrieval. So how do you make it retrieve? Now, if you've just tagged it and left it there, it won't help. So here again, this is the same example if you take. If you have a risk and control matrix, so whenever I take a secondary transportation process and I have tagged it against that secondary transportation process and I make it mandatory that whenever, say, you are doing an audit for a branch, you have to do secondary transportation. So it's linked in that. And then when I link secondary transportation to the processes in which you have to audit, and automatically that retrieval happens, then that knowledge is retrieved. Now, the other part is intuition. Now, there is no substitute for human intuition. And that's really the differentiation we bring to the table. And therefore, how do we nurture the intuition of our team members in being able to take all this data that is archived, retrieved, etc., and be able to apply? And how do you then institutionalize that intuition and take it back? So one of the things we do in Wipro is we create these learning videos, and something that we have done differently, then we upload that learning video. So tomorrow, if it triggers that thought, okay, this person did this, so can I do that? So how does my knowledge management system trigger intuition? So this is a big opportunity for us to enable tech. Now, the other opportunity is in terms of audit lifecycle management. Now, I don't have to go through all of this. These are the stuff that we do as part of audit. But if we are able to digitize the audit lifecycle management through through our audit process as internal auditors, and these are basic stuff, but it is important because many times we feel that when I am doing a digital journey, it's about, the RPAs I have used, the bots that I'm using, the fancy analytics I have prepared. All of that is important. But setting our basics right is as much important. So how have we digitized how we have put our own home in order? That's the starting point. So, and a good place to start our digitization journey can be in the audit lifecycle management. Now, the other one, M, now, which is mathematics. Now, I spoke about it earlier. This is again some of the tools which we've used in our audit. I've just pasted some simple techniques, like correlation or trend analyzing or, regression or some statistical method for sample calculation. How do we bring science into the process of judgment? The more we try to bring science into the process of judgment and make it easy for people rather than jargonizing it and making it too complex, the more we will find that the orientation of our team member changes and they start looking at the process differently. So creating these standard processes. So for example, in Wipro, when someone takes a particular audit, there are certain set of routines they have to execute, and many companies do that. Because what we are trying to do is we are trying to trigger those little cells in the brain to say, I have approached this scientifically. Now then I'm spotting this trend. So till then the left brain has done its work. Once the trend is spotted, then the right brain wakes up. And then it says, okay, now what is this? What's happening? Then the time is invested in asking why. They say 5 whys you ask till you get to the root cause of the issue. Or Bhavani was saying 8th level of detail we must get to. So the brain faculty is used to get to that 8th level of detail and not lost in trying to just find out, pick some 20 samples and do some 20 sample cover. I didn't find any exception. Or you find one exception, you go to the auditee and he says, yeah, but this was because of this. And then you just move on. So from there, we have to move to how do we create let the left brain do the exception finding and let the right brain use its intuition and drive insights from the exceptions that we have found. So little steering our mind towards mathematics also helps in audit digitization journey. Now, the next one which I have is N, which is no entry for cyber defense. Bhavani spoke about it in elaborate amount of detail, so I'm not going to get into this. But I just want to make one point here that security audit is not a rocket science. Like Bhavani said, there are simple parameters that are needed to be applied. A lot of it is common sense driven. We have to work closely with the IT organization because some of those capabilities have to be built. But we have the ability to steer those capabilities. And therefore, in today's audit world, if we are an internal auditor and we can't really have a point of view on the security of the estate, then we are failing in our duty. I'll take the same analogy. If we were doing an audit of a plant, we will first go and check ki gate kahan pe hai, entry hai, is there a guard there? Is he making an entry log? Truck kaisa aata hai, kaisa jata hai? Because we want to ensure physical security. Now the world is digital, we have to ensure digital security. So whatever skills that are required to audit or have a point of view on the digital security of the landscape, I think we have to have that capability which we have to build. Now moving on to O, which is online always. Most of our organizations are online. There is tremendous social media footprint. It is important that we have an ability to assess the security of the online footprint. So, of course, it starts with assessment of risk of transactions. That's a very simple thing, starting point. Say, I have a website and in which I am selling. So what is the security? Can the website be hacked? If the collection is coming, which bank account it's going? Is it being reconciled? All of that we know what to do. Now, the next stage of that is social networking data. I'm collecting a lot of data from the social media. Now, what is the impact assessment of the data I'm collecting? Of course, one is privacy, security, etc. But what are all the data? Where all are they being used? Is it being used in the business process in a way that it can create the outcome that is needed? That's the second aspect. Now, third aspect is the universe of interactions. Like I am collecting data, our people are going and leaving footprint everywhere. Many companies today have social media sensing capabilities where they have scrollers on the internet, and it keeps looking at what type of interactions are happening relating to your product, your brands, how your employees are interacting with the internet, and how others are interacting about your products with the internet. It is important for us as internal auditors to understand the universe of interactions. I'm not saying that we should set up that scroller and start monitoring, but we need to know whether we have a robust process for picking up these interactions in the organization. There is somebody who reviews it, who takes action, and that process we can review. So like we would have in the case of a physical audit, if we see whether there's a gate register, who comes in, who goes out, somebody has a track of that, approves it. This is at a much exploded scale, but of course technology can help us manage that scale. What are the universe of interactions and how we are managing that? Then of course the power of the predictive. Now this is my Now, power of the predictive, I'm going to, this example that I have here is the DBS group, and I'm going to pick some, I've taken this as an example. So earlier, apparently in the DBS group, they used to have like criteria of which branch they want to audit. So they will say, years of experience, kisme itna risk hai, all that. Now, it is scientifically proven that the human brain can process only 7 attributes, Now, what they did was they fed a lot of data into a data model which could process 130 different internal and external attributes, and the data model threw out 50% more accurate predictions than what they were doing before. So it completely changed the paradigm of how one looks at your sample set. Now, I want to take an example closer home in a company that I worked for. We were looking at, and that's not an audit example, but it's a relevant example. So we were looking at forecasting for finance. So what used to happen was that many of the finance people used to look at variety of attributes and make a forecast. So what we started doing was we started feeding that forecast to a AI tool. And over a period of time, I think about 4 or 5 quarters, we realized that the forecast of revenue that the AI tool was predicting was actually better than the forecast that we all, with all our intelligence and intuition, were predicting. I am not saying that the AI can replace us in prediction, but it can provide us key data points that we can consider. And so therefore, when there is a level of maturity reached in the organization, and again, it is not a maturity in the internal audit department, it is a maturity in the company. If there is a maturity reached in the company where predictive analytics can be used, which means the multiple data sets are available to explore, to examine, to pull together, the power of the predictive is phenomenal. And there are so many people that talk about what all can be done with predictive analytics. You would have seen thousands of videos. I'm not giving those examples, but over a period of time, by our influence on the organization, we have to slowly move the data journey in the organization to a place where we can leverage the power of the predictive. Now, next is RPA. Now, again, Bhavani spoke about RPA, so I'm not going to dwell into it. But one important aspect of our RPA journey is to assess the risk of the RPA. Now, I am not elaborating that because it's very similar to what we spoke for IoTs. But as auditors, every time a new form of technology is introduced in the organization, our antenna has to light up and then say, Acha, let me understand. Ye kya kar raha hai? What is it going to do? What does it speak to? What outcome does it deliver? We have to ask the questions that are relevant to that technology and assess the risk. Now, the one of the surprising risks that come up in many RPA journey is change management risks. So many times the documentation of what you feed into the RPA, so what outcome will come, is not effective. So let me take my old example of BRS. Now what we say ki RPA, we can build a tool which can auto match. It will take the bank data, it will take the book data, it will auto match. But have a clear data set key? We have got 20 bank accounts. All the 20 bank accounts have to be fed. That's fine. That mostly will ensure. But do we have an SOP saying every time the treasurer goes and adds the 21st bank account, he has to come to the RPA masters team and ensure that the 21st bank account is included? Now that's what we can ask as a question. Likewise, every single aspect of what the program does, we should apply our audit intuition and be able to ask the question on what can go wrong with the tool, what are the risks of the tool, how the risk is being addressed. So many times people buy off-the-shelf RPA tools. We can ask questions saying, is any of our confidential data being shared with the service provider? Important question. So that means what data is, because many times data is on the cloud, that it may be on the platform of the service provider. So which means that does he have access to our data? So how is that being secured? Is there a contract for data security? There is nothing wrong in data being on the cloud, but then we need to know how the underlying contract for that and how secure our data is. So really asking very logical questions will help us create genuine value for whatever technology the organization embarks on. Now, of course, then the other aspect of RPA is how RPA can be used for audit. I'm not expanding this. I think Bhavani gave a very nice example of RPA, but there are multiple applications available for RPA. And if we have the maturity in the organization to go on to an RPA journey, it is something we can definitely embark on. Now, coming to S, what are the success factors? Now, I had this real privilege to be part of the launch of a joint thought leadership paper between ICAEW and ICAI last year, back end of last year. And that paper was on automation in finance function, lessons from India and UK. Now, this is an extract from that paper, and I really liked the way they had captured what are we trying to do with automation. Now, I want to read some of those parts which really resonated with me, saying, recognize that automation enables wider digital transformation in finance. So it's not just about what you do in internal audit, but wider digital transformation, and show finance staff how automation can help their role. It's so true for audit staff also. Sometimes they feel that, oh my God, it is a very complicated technology they're bringing. They bought some RPA guy. Maybe he will start doing my job. My job will disappear. We have to show the benefit of, first of all, these are not difficult to learn and how they can be part of that journey. Now, the other piece is technologies, where they say that we have to do our own research on what tech product works for us. So do your research into your tech products and develop awareness of the relevant marketplace. So it's very similar. We've always kept, if you go into any tax specialist, many chartered accountants are tax specialists, you go into their room, you'll have thousands of books behind their back, a good background for online video calls. But we have the ability to assimilate so much data and know what to refer for what. So why is technology any different? Why is it so complicated for us to not be able to read up what are the tech products available in the market, develop awareness, be able to have a point of view on what will suit our need? Now, approaches to automation, think agile and collaborative ways, deliver practical benefits, share learnings. Fantastic points. Again, managing change. Stress the importance of attitude, open-mindedness, and focus on continuous improvement. I know I've spent a bit of time reading this slide, but this really, and in fact, if you have the time, you should go and read that paper. It's a very, very beautifully written paper. It talks about finance function and automation, very practically written. A lot of it really resonated with me, and I wanted to share with all of you. If you are embarking on a tech journey in audit, Now, of course, next comes tools and utilities. Now, there are many off-the-shelf tools. Currently, people use Python, R, SQL, some of those languages they use. Visualization, people use tools like Power BI, Tableau. There are other tools as well. A lot of it can be done on Excel, macros, ERP bolt-ons. So here I want to use little bit jargon. So historically, approach to technology was very monolithic. What do I mean by monolithic approach to technology? So if I needed to develop a supply chain planning tool, what I would normally do is I would take first I will design the ERP, which means all my plans are connected to the ERP. There is a module that is implemented. There is a APO that is implemented on top that runs the planning module. Once the APO is done, then I'll go to SAP BI where my reports will come out of. So our historic thinking about use of technology has always been monolithic, which means if I want to embark on a SAP implementation journey for an organization, it's a 3 to 5 year journey. But now the way technology has evolved, it has become very agile. Now, what do I mean by agile? It means that I don't now need to have all the data sitting in my ERP. I don't need to have a process that helps me make all the data speak to each other seamlessly in one flow. It is possible for me with distributed data. It is desirable to have unified data, but it is possible for me to have distributed data and build on that. So for example, if I have, say, all my sales data sitting in a certain CRM system, if I have all my customer data sitting in a certain, say, customer feedback system or some customer exception management system, today we have the ability to bring this data into a data lake, pull out the fields that we want, match them, and throw up the exceptions. So a lot of the tools and utilities that we want to use is only constrained by our ability to think what can be done with what is there out there. And we don't have to wait for a 3-year, 5-year plan of implementation of some large system. And then from there, I will go and find the answers to my problems. So our intuition in being data intuition, which we spoke about, in being able to use the tools and technologies at our disposal is going to play a long way in we being able to create value. Now then the next, this visualizations and wow. Now I have put my dashboard every day morning, which I see. This is a simple dashboard which says what is the status of different audits, where what is started, where is what, which unit is there, which stage of audit it is. And I can click on each of them and I can drill down to multiple level of details. Now in every process, every aspect, visualization helps. It is proven that the human brain is more trained to read visualized data faster. Now, but visualization is one aspect of it. Now, where does the wow come from? Now, the wow comes from storytelling, and Bhavani spoke about this. Actually, when we try to tell a story, it's about having conceptual clarity in our mind on the story we want to tell. What is the outcome we want to deliver? There are multiple visualization methods. So for example, say a waterfall diagram is a fantastic way of telling a story. You know how a particular cost element has moved, where you're seeing exceptions and what that exception is going to lead to is a fantastic way. Progress bars. That's again another fantastic way of telling a story. Data maps. It could be a country data map, state data map, unit data map, process data map, maps. Again, is a fantastic way of telling a story on where the exceptions stand out. Tornado diagrams. Again, fantastic tool. There are many such tools, and I am not here to share the inventory of those tools. I think there are many visualization courses available online, or even if you go into, say, Microsoft PowerPoint and see what type of visualizations are there, and then see what applies to our situation. I think really our ability to communicate the story that is coming out of the data in a visual way generates the wow at the end of the audit outcome. Moving on, I'm almost getting to the fag end of my presentation, and I think I've spoken really fast because I had to cover A to Z in 50 minutes. the X factor, the real X factor in a tech journey, your audit tech journey is, it's an obvious answer, you. Now, this is a very nice quotation I picked up from the Chartered Accounting Institute of Australia and New Zealand, which says, secret of success is not in predicting the future. It's about creating people who can thrive in a future that cannot be predicted. So our real journey in automation in internal audit or automation in any function is how we are able to apply ourselves into the business context and how we are able to generate outcomes which are relevant to that context. So with that, I know you are all auditors here, and definitely you would have noticed by now that I did miss an alphabet in the A to Y journey, and that alphabet is Q. Now, I am open to questions, but like Nandaji said that we will take the questions at the end of Gautam's session. Therefore, I'll hold this slide for you to come back to questions at the end of the journey. I do want to wish all of you a Zen weekend, a weekend of peace, a weekend of satisfaction that tech in audit is not rocket science. It can be demystified. Any of us can lead a journey of tech in audit, and really the X factor is our own intuition knowledge, which only we possess and only we can deliver the outcome. With that brings me to the end of my session. Back to you.
Thank you, Sandhya Madam, for sharing her wonderful experiences. Now I would like to invite Mr. Gautam Pense to begin with his sessions.
Okay. Thank you so much for this opportunity. A big thank you to ICAI. Another big thank you to both Bhavani and Sandhya for wonderful insights that I captured from your journeys. It was really enriching. I think what clearly comes out, and I'm just repeating at the cost of repeating it for a minute, tech embedment in IA has certainly demonstrated advantages, not just for efficiency and effectiveness gains, but for me personally, I think what it actually brings out is our ability to advance that point of assurance to the near real time in the environments where we are able to successfully stabilize continuous controls monitoring. Secondly, I think in these recent times when everybody have asked to deliver more with less, I think there cannot be any other good example than tech embedment in IA to deliver on that mandate that many of us have. And the third, equally important for me personally, where the real benefit of tech embedment helps, is to actually reduce our audit risks in the areas that we audit. And what I mean by audit risk is our inability to find things which were going wrong in the areas that we have audited, where we have relied on samples rather than looking at the entire population of data. Now, these all demonstrated benefits. The realization of these benefits, I personally feel, a lot depend on the organization context in which each one of us are operating. So to that effect, each one of our tech embedment journey is unique, like a tailor-made suit. There are no ready-mades. Today, over next, about 15 to 20 minutes, what I want to do is little different, and I want to leave a thought for all of you to ponder upon. Now, some of you must be thinking, if it's only a single thought that I want to leave behind, then why do I need 20 minutes to cover? Rest be assured, I will be brief and I will be to the point. many of us in our respective profession as internal auditors, we want to be effective. We want to be relevant all the time, especially in today's dynamic business environment. And for us to be relevant, we are trying different things, all the time. We're trying to juggle, have a balance between two facets of our work. That is one, assurance, and second is advice. While Bhavani and Sandhya beautifully brought out various possibilities that exist on embracing tech on the assurance side of our work facet, in next 10 to 15 minutes, I'm just trying to share some of my experiences of similar possibilities do exist on the other side or the other facet of our work, that is advice. Only if we are willing to flip the coin. Only if we are willing to explore that side of our work. Now, what I'm going to do is share about 3 or 4 examples from our own journey over many years, where internal audit actually took a lead to influence business to embrace tech, to find a win-win solutions to the common problems that we were highlighting through the audits. And I'll start with first example. And this example actually is a very old example, now almost a decade old. You must be wondering then why am I sharing something which is so decade old when things are changing so fast. But this is the first big success that we as audit team actually had when we actually flipped our coin from assurance to the bit of advice. Now this is about compliances tracking and reporting. So typically when we used to audit around that time, there were many gaps in this whole process within the organization. Pan-India compliance landscapes for an industry like telecom, it's very complicated because there are national level compliances, there are state level, there are municipal level, and on top of that, there are regulations. So in our discussions at the end of our audits with CFO, where we completed briefing him about, okay, where things are going wrong, why they are going wrong. We actually nudged him saying that if we want to truly improve this whole area and have a sustainable solution, we have no choice but to embrace tech, to get our acts together. While he willingly accepted that suggestion, but he was equally quick to put the ball back in our court, saying, hey guys, why not you guys lead this whole project and we will support you from the business. So there we went, 3 of us, in fact 3 from my team members, almost for entire year. We drove along with the business team to actually evaluate whatever the products which were available then in the market, to realize that, okay, none of them suits our requirement, so we need to necessarily customize it. So right from vendor selection to the customization, to the UATs, to the content creation, to the business user trainings on how to use that particular system, stabilizing the system for initial period and then handing it over back to the CFO's office. So it was a mammoth journey. We learned a lot. And at the end of that whole project of 1 year, the icing on the cake for us was when we realized that, Idea Cellular, the erstwhile Idea Cellular, was the first telecom operator in the country to have automated the entire process with the dashboards extracted from systems directly being presented to the audit committee of the board, supporting the CFO and MD's compliance certification to the board in an absolute transparent manner. Now, as an auditor, what did we gain out of it other than the experience of working closely with the business? Subsequent years, when we actually looked at that area as an audit, our life became very easy because all we had to do was to just log in into the system, look for the evidences for whichever compliances we wanted to verify, and that's it. Second example I am sharing with you is from a commercial function, where again, when we used to do audits on commercial contracts, there are so many benefits that we generally agree with vendors to avail. The processes which were in place to avail those on time to the fullest extent. Many gaps that we had noted, and similar to CFO, when we were sitting with the chief commercial officer to highlight him what were our key audit findings, why it occurred, and things like that. He heard us very patiently. He also went through the action plans which were given by his team. And to our surprise, after a month or two after that meeting, we got an invite from commercial team saying, look, we want to actually clean up that whole area. Is it possible for you guys to work with us? And let's together find out a kind of a tech solution for all the problems that you guys have highlighted through the audit. And again, we embarked on a similar journey like that earlier example I shared, scouting for the solutions available, realizing that nothing can give us the ready-made solution. So along with the vendor that we had shortlisted, we actually wrote with the help of commercial the system specification, and over the period of 4 to 5 months, we got that whole system developed and delivered. Another example, moving on as a third example, when the Companies Act got revised in 2013, there came the IFC regulations. With that host of new compliance requirements, which were made to be honored by all listed companies. Now, like in many places, internal audit, I think, was put in the driver's seat by the business to create that framework. And as a part of that framework creation journey, we and the finance team, we landed up again creating a new system altogether from scratch to suit our requirements, to actually track, monitor, map, and report all the key financial controls that we wanted to monitor and present to the audit committee. Now, the beauty of that system is it had the facilities where management's their own test results could have been uploaded. Internal auditors had their own access to upload their own independent test results for whichever controls they have picked up as part of their testing. Statutory auditors, as part of their own testing, whatever they have done, they had a separate login to upload, and consolidated dashboards were generated and then presented to the management as well as to the audit committee. A fourth example I'm sharing is about, and this is a recent one, not yet concluded, we are still working on it, is about asset reconciliations and management, again in a telco environment, more so on the network assets. Now you would imagine the complexity of this process because the existence of assets on almost 2 lakh physical locations spread throughout India. How do we get that comfort that they are there, and any movement which happens from one location to another is correctly captured and recorded? Not that there are no systems currently. There are quite a good systems and well-monitored processes in place. However, we are still evaluating as of today, with the advancement of technology, how can we bring in additional improvement that we want in this whole process. So internal audit again has been invited by finance, by commercial and network teams to work with them in this project And then right now we are actually at a stage to finalize our partner, and it's going to be a journey of another 6 to 8 months. While there are many possibilities that exist on this side of our work, which is on advisory, kind of an advisory, but it actually supports our main bread and butter work of assurance, because it brings in a lot more quicker value add. It helps us to win trust of business in a lot faster way. It cements relationships. And most importantly, I think the business starts seeing us not just as a fault finder. Uh, However, we have to be really careful when we actually are evaluating these possibilities and taking a decision where to participate and where not to participate. So there are a couple of factors that we must be absolutely careful of and sure of. First, do we really have a deep understanding of the area of business where a request for such project participation has come, whether it is for technology adoption or any other kind of request. Second, do we have the requisite skill sets in terms of team members and the experience who can actually do a meaningful contribution while they are part of that project team? And third, equally important, is we having a complete clarity as to what is going to be our role as internal auditors in that project. And that clarity is essential from the perspective of we maintaining our independence and objectivity. So to sum up, there are many possibilities, like on the assurance side, on this other facet of our work, which is on advice. All that we need to do is we need to look for them. We can possibly start small, and we can possibly look at taking some calculated risks. Because if nothing else, we will certainly learn new valuable lessons and knowledge in this whole process. And suppose if things are going well, then we are absolutely sure that we have turned a new chapter in our journey to remain relevant. So that's it. It was a very short, as I said, to the point and brief. The possibilities of tech adoption, IA playing that influencing role to push business to get into adopting different technologies and tech-based solutions to the problems that we are commonly facing. Thank you so much. Am I audible? Oh, but I can't hear anybody.
Yes, you are very much audible.
Okay. So I think I have left enough time for Q&A because for such a two fantastic presentations, I'm sure there are many people who want to ask, how do we go about it?
Arti, back to you. I think it's like India wants more types. People want to hear you more, Gautam.
No, I think the Arun who was coordinating in between, I think he got dropped off.
Yes, yes.
I can see Nandaji a bit on mute.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Gautamji. And all speakers for a very scintillating presentation. So now we have to go for question answer session. Madam has also come. Welcome, Madam Bhavani. It was a very nice, power-packed session. So now we come on for next 40 minutes. We'll have to go with certain intricacies and questions which may arise. The first question, you all are chartered accountants working as head of internal audit. You may be taking certain firms to do your work. And we primarily represent the entire firms of the country. So my first question to you, what skill sets you see in an auditor who we want to be working with you, either as an internal auditor or maybe as a fiscal verificator or some number of other activities. So my first question is, how do you see or what skill set you want in an auditor who can come and help you, who can work up to the expectation levels as raised by you? We can go in the same order, first Madam Bhavani, then you, and then Mr. Gautam. We can go in that order. Madam Bhavani.
Sure, Nandaji. Yeah, sure, Nandaji. Thank you. So I would say the auditor that we want primarily needs to be able to communicate well. I think above all else, for me, the communication skill, the confidence in expressing their ideas, etc., is fundamentally the most important skill. And then some degree, and if I'm looking at an experienced hire or somebody to come in from a firm to help us, some degree of experience with the processes that we are keen on. It's difficult to, unless it's a fresher, it's difficult to be a training ground from the grounds up. We need somebody to come and hit the road, and therefore some familiarity with the process and the technical life cycle of an audit, right? It's difficult unless, of course, we do take freshers and that's fine. But when we're looking at a firm or a experienced hire, they need to have some of those fundamentals. The technological side, I still believe it can be learned since we already have a team that is doing it. We just link them with somebody who can express analytical thinking, problem solving skills in an interview. How have you gone about handling a difficult situation? All of those things, if they can express well, means that they're able to kind of work with a colleague and work on a project, learn those harder skills. I would say the harder, when I say hard, not difficult, but the technical side, right, can be learned on the job, because sometimes people don't have access to the tools and therefore have never learned. Not that they could not have learned on their own, but they never got the opportunity. Many of the people coming from small or medium firms in the articleship or their early audit careers may not have had some of that experience, but they're good thinkers. So we can't, kind of penalize them for that lack of opportunity. So I think these are definitely some of the factors that we need. And I think somebody who can kind of, speak to a head of audit as if they were a friend, right? That's for me very important. That kind of hesitation, that fear factor. Because I would be putting a consultant, a senior consultant, right on top with the head of a department. I mean, we don't have so many layers that we can take the manager, senior manager, and director to go for a conversation. Therefore, their ability to be challenged by a process owner and hold ground and be confident and express what they have done and why they believe their point of view is correct is very important. Otherwise, we will have to babysit the auditors all the time, which is impossible. So I think these, in a nutshell, is what we would look for.
Yes, and I think Bhavani covered most of it. I would like to probably only add is that definitely business process understanding or ability to understand the business process is a very valued skill, because that unless the person has the value comes when we are able to understand the landscape and B, ask probing questions. The key role of an auditor is be able to ask the right questions to solicit the right answers. And that's what sets the right tone for whatever outcome we want to deliver. So being able to ask the right questions, and that, like Bhavani said, also includes how do you deal with senior stakeholders. Or it's also, it's a known truth that auditors are not like always welcome, so which means that it requires influencing skills, it requires patience, it requires being able to work with people, knowing when to escalate, when to navigate, when to let go. So those are the skills that, in addition to, of course, for example, if it's a technology specific audit and you want to do a deep dive of say ITGC knowledge is required. So in addition to some of the technical skills that are audit specific, I think the soft skills play a big role in selection. Over to you, Gautam.
Okay, thanks, you. So from my end, sir, I would like to add only 2 points. One, skills that I look forward depends on what area we want that help from to audit. So as rightly covered by Sandhya and Bhavani, do they have that subject matter knowledge and the conceptual clarity on that aspect of business through their past audit experiences? So that's point number one. Second, since in our case, anybody who, as our partner team, who joins us for audit execution, they normally work with our team members. So they do not have any independent audit responsibilities because even the reports are published by us in our name. So all their work is monitored, controlled, everything is by us in-house team. So from that perspective, the second point that we look forward to compatibility of working, because we are generally working on a very short span of about 3 to 4 weeks for each audit. So the compatibility in terms of temperament, in terms of wavelength, in terms of some of the softer skills that have already been mentioned, I think that plays a very, very important role, not just with the business, but within the team itself. So these are the 2 things that we generally look forward to.
Thank you, Gautamji. Thank you. I feel that this guidance will help firms prepare themselves to be part of internal audit assignments from you all. The second question, it comes from Mr. Jitendra. He says, will the internal audit be possible off-site by use of technology? He adds, is off-site internal audit desirable from proprietary perspective apart from technical tools? So he's of the view, in my opinion, that if there are some pandemic issues other than that, if it is possible, should one go for off-site audit or not? Your views. Same way you would want. Yes, madam.
Yeah, so I think, to be honest, we've already been doing that for some time, and I think it is a fairly efficient model. Because, firstly, we have to look at the structure of an organization. If a lot of processes are centralized, right, you don't need to go on site to a particular geography or entity to do a lot of the work when there are central process owners that you need to deal with. And most companies, large companies, have back office operations which are centralized. That having said, of course, we do have many of our operations, especially, let's say, Infosys, the acquisition, likewise, many of the IT companies are on an acquisition, kind of cycle, and those companies don't integrate straight away with our back office functions. So obviously there will be some aspects that are run locally. Even then, with today's technology enablement, data sharing methodology, etc., offsite audits are still effective. That having said, I think if it's a new location or a location that is in a country which is kind of not scoring too well in a transparency index, or one of those countries which you have had already history of some concerns in the past, I think occasional kind of dropping in your auditors for physical visits is absolutely essential, because no matter what happens, the auditor walking the corridors, the traditional auditor looking around, walking through the gate to even see if there's tailgating, are security measures effective, are people doing the jobs they're supposed to do. What the eyes can see is very powerful. So I think we in Infosys combine this. We don't have to go to a location all the time. Certainly in this year, FY21, we couldn't go anywhere. But I think a combination is definitely effective, but never would I say that you have to go to a situation where you have to always audit on site. I think off-site auditing from an off-site model is effective, has always happened before pandemic, continued very well in pandemic, and will continue into the future. Sandhya.
So I'd like to add a slightly different flavor to what Bhavani said, and because also I come from a manufacturing organization. context is a little different. I feel that the value that the auditor brings to the table is not just the numbers and the data and the analytics, but it's being understanding the pulse, the culture, the values, the DNA. How, for example, what is the tolerance to say a safety violation in a factory? It's very important to establish the culture of the factory. So if there is a control violation, you'll have a similar tolerance level. So the smell test that an auditor does, the touch test, smell test, feel test of an auditor when he or she lands at a place can never be done by a machine. Now, of course, historically, we have not been able to draw those lines very clearly. So while the auditor lands there, they will spend a month at the site and look at everything, do vouching, do analytics, do end-to-end in that place and then come back. And of course, even before pandemic and with technology helping that, a lot of the work that the auditor does can be done offline. But I feel that the value that the auditor brings is in the touch and feel. Therefore, as much as possible, the auditor must, I feel, visit the units, understand the feeling, understand the pulse, understand the DNA, and be able to use those learnings in the way they build their audit outcomes. However, that should not become a constraint. So I cannot say that this year I have not been able to travel, so I can't deliver my audit plan. I still have to find a way. So for example, right now in all the countries where there are travel restrictions and in most countries are not allowing, everybody feels that outsiders are coming and giving COVID to their people. So nobody is allowing anybody from another country inside. But in most of those countries, what we've done is we've split the audit into two scopes where areas like physical verification or areas like checking of physical processes, etc. We've taken up local auditors who have gone and done that for us and then, shared that back with us. So we've found some ways of finding that little extended touch and feel. But I feel that the auditor touch and feel should not be compromised. Over to you, Gautam.
Yeah, so that's a very, very, very pertinent point. I just want to add two more points not covered and which I personally feel would be relevant. One, as Bhavani said, the organization structure, the way the organization is structured, centralized, decentralized, geographical spread, those are important factors which influence whether we can continue to do audits entirely remotely or we need a balance. But equally important is, in my view, culture. And when I say culture, sometimes some organizations, people are just not comfortable interacting on digital platforms, no matter how much you try. And with the limited timelines that we all work with, we are at times left with no choice but to physically go sit with them, because I think that's a level of comfort that they have. So that is one aspect which will play a role. Secondly, some of the audits, I feel entirely remote execution may not be possible because those audits per se could be market facing. If I'm doing any audits in sales and distribution where I have to really get into market, look at the area, do some mystery shopping, customer experiences, things like that. So I think the nature of audit also to some extent will decide whether we will be able to do it entirely remotely. But I agree to the point that what we have experienced in this whole pandemic year, I think this model is here to stay. What degree of complete remote execution, that is something will vary from organization to organization, but it is certainly here to stay.
Thank you. Thank you so much. The next question is from Mr. Rajesh Chandra Sharma. He has a very pertinent and nice question which we all need to answer. He says, in technology-enabled internal audit procedure, how can one maintain audit evidence and working papers, which are always wanted by the institute in case there is some inconsistency in the working? To create, because one thing is there, madam, one thing is there. We auditors feel comfortable when we touch a paper. When you get it through a scanned copy, you never feel that comfort level. You feel something is problem. whatever intro audits we also do, we send our people to go and see it is there in the files, everything is there. So that mindset will always how to take care of that. Let me tell you, we are an integral part of IFAC, the Institute of Chartered Accountants of India is an integral part of IFAC, where we have more than 150 constituent members. And on 30th March 2020, we came with a guidance on remote audit, how we have to create that. But for membership at large and being on the other side of the table, I would request you to enlighten how the working papers and more importantly, the audit evidence are created. Please, over to you, madam.
Okay, sure. So I will try to give my perspective. So I think, there has to be a balance. There has to be a balance between digital audit evidence. I think while we like to touch the paper, I think for many reasons, both environmental and technology enablement, the ability to work remotely, all of these things, kind of force us to be more efficient in digital audit evidence management. I think Sandhya had spoken about some of the tools that they use. We also use similar tools where you are able to keep your audit evidence in a secure manner, tamper-free, etc. So we have to be comfortable with those additional measures that ensures those audit evidences are not being tampered with. That's one category of audit evidence which I think we have to be comfortable with and will continue to stay. Okay, so that's one part. The other part, of course, is the physical signed copy of a contract, for example. You want to see and you want to touch and see that signature was actually there, for example, or some other document, some other agreement executed, so on and so forth. There will always be that element where you will balance out, where you will balance out the ability to, and that's where your kind of your traditional sample testing will still continue to some degree. While you analyze and you check everything through digital records, you will still say, look, I want to just come and, even if it's like a deterrent, by going and touching one or two of these audit evidence, documentation and retaining them for your evidence, you operate as a deterrent because the auditor is going to come, right? He's going to come and check. So I can't kind of not maintain my records correctly as a record keeper of the process itself. And of course, if that is the record that you are retaining, then we have to find methods of retaining those evidences as well. Archival methods, or physical archival and digital archival are all methods that we have to work with. Obviously, the volume is, I think, rapidly reducing in terms of physical audit evidences, right? Files that we keep, etc. Because I think in today's day and age, even physical security is becoming more and more challenging. Today, sometimes the digital world is more secure to some degree because people, movement of people, data, physical records getting lost can't be replicated as well. So some of these things, although we should bear in mind, I think it's a fine balance between the two, to be honest. Sandhya, over to you.
Yes, I think. Yes, Bhavani covered it all. I just want to add one small point is that it is also important to invest in a proper archival tool, in a physical world where we are taking copies, etc., having some SharePoint where some data is stored is enough. But if our audit is going to be more and more digital, then making that level of investment which is required for proper archival, proper retrieval is important. And even also ensuring that our people are able to tag the working papers correctly. Now, in a physical setup, you will see, acha, stock reconciliation ho gaya, paper dekha, laga diya file mein, done. But if you've tested, say the logs, access logs of a particular solution, and then you formed an assertion saying that the access logs are in order, then we need to have a working step in the indexing solution which says that I will test access logs, and then you have to make the team upload that these are the access logs I have tested. It can't be left to the judgment of the person that in some SharePoint he will put some file, and when an inquiry comes later or somebody asks a question or whatever, we are scrambling around. So in making investments, like the way in the past we'll have invested money in a filing cabinet, we have to invest money in digital filing cabinet equivalent. So that will be the only small addition that I'd want to make to what Bhavani said. Over to you, Gautam.
Yeah, so actually I have nothing to add on this particular one. I think it's only a matter of habit, matter of our own mindset to getting comfortable of actually handling all the digital documentation as a part of our own audit process. And just as business has its own document management process, we need to have one at our end. So I think it's in the end, it's a matter of time till we get comfortable with this new way of working.
Thank you, sir. There is a question from Mr. Murli Krishnamurthy Y. He says, there are numerous technologies like RPA, cloud compounding, artificial intelligence, data analytics, etc. Kindly explain their efficacy while conducting internal audit. So I suggest that you all three could speak on one or two things so that proper coverage can be made wherever you want to.
Right. So I will talk about, I think we've talked about RPA. I will, since I had talked about that earlier. So efficacy of RPA, if you look at it from an effectiveness and an efficiency perspective, right? Definitely the efficiency is a no-brainer. There is some setup or implementation effort which is required, and there is maintenance effort required, but it's nowhere the same as the amount of effort you would have done had you had to do it manually. So therefore, efficiency is a given when you adopt RPA into internal audit. Now, the other element of efficacy is how effective is it in doing testing. Now, obviously it is highly dependent on what it's told to do, right? So a human being can think on the go and modify its thought process and do something given the evidence presented to it. RPA solution cannot do that, so it will fail. Right? If it doesn't see what it's expecting to see, it will fail. But at least a well scripted RPA should fail, and a fail is good because a fail is feedback mechanism where the human auditor now has to step in and see what is this fail all about and what do I need to do about it. Could be the process has changed, could be the job failed for some technical reason, etc. So the efficacy is supported by the human auditor looking at the failure and how we rectify the failure. But I think the third most important element is what Sandhya brought up is about the governance of your RPA program, because that is different from efficiency and effectiveness. It is about the susceptibility of the RPA solution to be manipulated, to kind of be exposed to other risk factors, to kind of give you false outputs even, right? So it may even give you, it can, is it susceptible to be manipulated to give you false outputs? Are you falsely assured that it's working? So a lot of your typical change management, who can access the bot ID, where is the password stored, can a human being run it at a inappropriate time, manipulate the source data, run it and show its result as working, and then go back and modify that bot again. All of these things come to governance. I think that's where most auditors will need to invest some more time, because it's kind of going into the DNA of that bot. It's it's all of us are not always equipped to look at what is the wiring of a bot. So that's where I think we need to invest our skills, or bring in the experts that can do it. I think that's my point of view on the efficacy of RPA. Sanjay, we want to pick up something.
So maybe I'll pick up AI, and I think AI or cognitive is quite jazzy and fancy. But a lot of application which is today in AI and cognitive is more on the forensics or in terms of investigation, frauds, because what it does is it can, like we had earlier explained, it can handle some amount of fuzziness in the logic. A typical program, like we know, is A plus B is equal to C. You give a logic and then it follows that logic. But what happens with a AI tool is it kind of builds on what you feed. It learns from the patterns or the behaviors it see the way you work with it. So, for example, in one of my earlier companies, we had a contract reading AI. AI, and I explained it a bit in my presentation. What that AI used to do is, because we have thousands of contracts which we process, so the AI would read through the contracts, and then based on the first time when we trained the AI, we trained the AI saying these are the exceptions you look for. So for example, pick up clauses on liability and say if the liability is limited for the company. So the AI, while they say natural language processing, it is that AI can read some plain English legal text and say, yes, there is a liability cap. So then it throws out saying that this is the liability cap that is there in the contract. So over a period of time, it will learn saying when a person reviews that liability cap, these are the exceptions that they pick up. So they pick up when there is a caveat to the liability cap. So it learns that whenever there's a caveat to the liability cap, that's what I need to flag. So over a period of time, it keeps fine-tuning the logic, and then it throws out exceptions. But a lot of it is about the human that's training the AI. That's why, like how to train your dragon. It's really how you train the AI to respond to the exceptions. And the logic also it comes from business experience. So what type of duplicate payments that normally happen? It only comes from the experience of having looked at many invoices and having seen what type of duplicates could come, and then, train that fuzzy logic with the AI. So I think for what I want to summarize here is that while AI is very hyped and all of that, it is just a simple aid to apply a certain logic in a more cognitive way than, a simple program. And a lot of it is depending on our intelligence and our inclination to work with that tool and be able to deliver outcomes. Over to you, Gautam.
Yeah, so I think if I recollect the question correctly, there were three parts. One was RPA, which Bhavani you covered. Second, I think, was cloud computing, and then analytics. Well, I don't know whether cloud computing per se has any bearing on how it will affect audit execution and audit efficacy, unless, I think, in my view, we are hosting our all tools in a cloud environment, and then I think the governance part that Bhavani mentioned about, how this, especially on the security of that whole cloud environment, where those tools are residing and which we are leveraging. I think that angle we need to cover. On analytics part, I think both the presentations of Bhavani and Sandhya, 2 hours, have covered absolutely in detail the possibilities, n number of possibilities, and it's only our imagination which can hold us back in terms of what is possible, what is not possible. So I think there is no doubt in my mind that analytics certainly helps from increasing our effectiveness as auditors, manifold.
Thank you. It was a really nice insight into the use of technology for audits. I have the next question from Mr. Venkata Ramanan J. He says, good evening to all. Kindly mention very important tools with respect to internal audit through which we generate quality reports to help management to reduce operational costs and to increase profitability. Please.
Okay. So if I heard it correctly, tools to help generate reports for management, right?
Yes, madam.
Right. So I think, truthfully speaking, if you're looking at ERP solutions, they come up with, they already have a suite of solutions, and you also have a lot of, like Sandhya mentioned earlier, SAP BI, for example, is a bolt on to SAP for all the kind of reports that you can get that management can use. But so that is, and then of course your bespoke applications, at Infosys, for example, because there's a host of bespoke applications, we have bolted on cubes that kind of give the human end user interface to that data set, where they can query and run reports that they want, or it comes up with a suite of reports that are pre-configured that can be run. So that is for management getting access to data. But the other side is giving management audit insights, right? So that's the other element, is how to give audit insights so that they can get the kind of information that they want. And I think here is where a good audit tool will kind of bridge half the issue. So there are many audit tools out there. Sandhya had talked about one that they use at Wipro. We use something similar at Infosys, where you kind of put all of your work papers and you put your insights, your questions, your audit program steps, etc., and you can generate reports from that. You can take sign-offs, you can generate reports, you can give measurement points on how your audits are going, and senior management in those respective areas can get access to that. So that is that other element, which, kind of reduces the cost of opening an email and trying to read it, because that takes time. There is, a link gets sent and they can click on the link and go into these insights. So I think, technology today has enabled a lot of that capability, where you don't have to use traditional methods of, PDF a file and send it, so to speak. Although that having said, there is something nice about being able to open a PPT and read the observation in that format. So I'm not, because sometimes the system generated report doesn't quite feel as good as something that's tailor-made. So I think what we have done to some extent is, put kind of one sliders on top of it to kind of, in fact, you don't even have to go to the observation sometimes. The one slider often tells the whole story. So when you are looking at audit committee level presentations, you may have a huge appendix of detailed observations, but if that stakeholder doesn't have the time to read every single observation, unless they are detail oriented and they want to, but that's available to them, we kind of have a very summary type presentation that effectively gives them enough about what is this process, what are the findings, and what is management agreed to do about it. So I think it's about tailoring some of that over and above the technology-enabled reports for some of the senior management. Sandhya,
Yes. I think Bhavani's covered it quite comprehensively. The good part of this Q&A is Bhavani makes our life simple. She covers most of the difficult part of the question.
Maybe we change the order next time.
But I'd just like to add one more, which is that flagging is very important in any insight. So what are the exceptions can we flag? So for example, if it's an inventory related flagging. So assuming, say, we are monitoring inventory across hundreds of units. Every time, say, an aging of certain inventory crosses more than 180 days, say, the value of the aging that crosses more than 180 days is more than, say, 5% of my inventory hold. That's a flag, because it can come as a profitability hit. It may need a supply chain trigger to use the inventory. So the value that the auditor brings in some of these tools is the right flags that you teach the system to put. And then if we are able to build them into whatever tool we are using for for reporting, it creates that, win-win virtuous circle of benefits. So every time we are performing an audit and we are seeing that there are certain key business KPIs that get influenced by certain triggers, if we are able to map those triggers into our flagging mechanism, that will help automatically the business take the right decisions, whether it comes to revenue or to profit. Over to you.
Yeah, so if I have understood the question correctly, it was about, is there any tool which can help us as auditors to basically highlight through our work on, helping organization improve profitability, cost reduction, something like that. So in my mind, there is no ready-made tool which can give auditors any such outcome. And as I think rightly said by Sandhya, it all depends on how we train. Whatever tool, it can be as simple as a normal Excel, but if we are clear as to what is it that we are looking forward to, what kind of exceptions, gaps that we are looking forward to, I think that input, that intelligence has to come from us itself. A tool per se may not have that readily available. Unless some sort of AI based intervention, which over the period it will learn and try to make our life a lot more easier, but it will also take some time. But yeah, so the answer is no ready-made tool can help us deliver on that. We will have to train whatever tools we have to to give us those insights. Nandaji, back to you.
Thank you, sir. So many questions are pouring in, so I was trying to identify which questions I should ask. Just for a second, and let me tell you, we have close to 2,000 viewers at this moment also. It is 8:46. We will not be able to take more than 2-3 more questions. And there is a very nice comment by one of the participants, Mr. Velinar. He says, very meaningful presentation by the first two speakers. The third speaker also spoke exceedingly well. You are requested to kindly share the same. Now, one question from Mr. B.S. Venkatesh. He's asking, can you list the texts used for building the fixed assets for the various units located in India? So if you have to construct a fixed asset register, what are the technology tools you are using? If there are, because these are quick questions. So if you can give that, would be nice, sir. If anybody has an idea.
So I will just say what we have done at Infosys. So, we have a bespoke application that we have built for the entire inventory of assets at Infosys, which includes allocation, all the serial details, all the asset, if it's software, and we use the same application for technology-based assets, physical assets, furniture, so on and so forth, equipment, and we also use it for software because it has fields that are customized to capture serial details and so on and so forth. So location, country, location, plant, or if not plant, office premises, sometimes even which floor, right? It's situated in. So that is there, and the good thing we've achieved is it is directly interfacing with the fixed asset register of SAP. So that was, previously, that was to kind of Gautam's earlier point, that was a nightmare for us as well, because, reconciling that was an annual nightmare. So now, it kind of goes through a workflow, and its condition is that, if it's not, one is not in the other, it kind of throws out those flagging that we talked about, right? So that is a bespoke solution with SAP Fixed Asset Register is how we do it at Infosys, at least. Maybe Sandhya can shed some light from a manufacturing angle, which is slightly more complex, I think.
Yes. But I think most companies are using the core is SAP or whatever is the ERP that they use, and that's what's used for fixed assets management. But some of the emerging tools, like I had also presented, is the use of IoT, because one of the biggest challenges which we face, especially in manufacturing setup where we have complex machinery built over a period of time, is really being able to tag, verify those assets and be able to reconcile them with the books. It's like a mammoth exercise. Every time, first of all, people don't ever want to do that fixed assets verification, and when they end up doing it, they have to set aside a lot of time, etc. So technology helps there. So tagging of assets, with say either a RFID or some sort of an identifier. That's one. The second bit is in terms of clusterizing assets, because one of the biggest reasons why when the fixed assets register verification happens that people struggle is that I have bought asset A, I have removed component B from it, and I have put in component C, and then the A is lying at item number 1 in the asset register, and C is lying as item number 200 in the asset register, and I'll find item number 1, I'll not find item number 200, and then that item number B is gone. So the other place where technology plays a role, and some techniques, which is how do you clusterize assets. So when you make addition and deletion to the fixed assets, you are able to see it in a consolidated way, and all the assets are seen together, and so therefore the retiral happens. So if the B is getting retired, so how are we doing the retiral of the asset? So that's the second aspect. The third aspect, of course, is in heavy manufacturing or heavy capex intensive industries, is just tracking of capex spends. And there are a lot of tools that are available for budget management of capex spends, and how the work in progress is being monitored, and then at what point is the capitalization to be done, what approvals are needed. So there are tools available, or many companies even build in-house tools. These are simple workflows to build, which again is very useful in capital intensive industries where there is continuous construction. disruption. But in all of this, again, I go back to the human element, is that the design has to come correctly, and we have to play an active role as the accountants or the auditors to ensure that the design is comprehensive. And based on our experience on the issues that we have faced in the past or what we see in the industry, we should build that into our design so that it is especially fixed assets has to be time proof more than foolproof, because the assets are going to be there for a long period of time, and on a continued basis we have to be able to verify those assets, assure ourselves that the assets are safe. So our process has to be time proof. So that would be my only addition to what Bhavani said. Over to you, Gautam.
Yeah, in our case, from fixed asset register perspective, we are using standard SAP workflow. SAP is our main financial ERP. We have a couple of front-end GUIs, if I may call it so, certain handheld apps to be accessed on handheld devices, which our field engineers use daily basis to trigger movement of assets, and it has a backward integration to my SAP, so that all those movements are on real-time basis getting captured. Other than this front end, I would say a GUI, we have barcodes which are used for asset tagging and verification, which ultimately help us in verification whenever we do. But other than these, there is nothing there is specifically to mention. Over to you, Nandaji.
Thank you so much, sir. I have a question. This is probably the last question I'll take. And before that, I want to tell the participants, there are large number, 2,000 participants at this time on a Saturday evening is a great honor to us. It's a tribute to the speakers who are spending their time first to ensure that things move in the right direction. So what I want to put forth most importantly is to all my participants that we'll be holding this series, a long series on technology as an enabler. So what are the areas where, because I see so many questions, it's not possible to take all the questions. Next Saturday, we have another program. So I request all the participants to send us the areas where they want to be enlightened, the topics which we can take. We have all speakers and we can take the help of the current speakers also. They can also refer so many learner speakers. So what I want from you all is to write, send a mail. You can have my credentials from ICAI.org, my all mobile number. The institute also, wherever you get the mail, you can write on that also. The institute, the board's email ID, you can write the topics which you want. So the last question of the day which I want to take is, the question is from Mr. Gopal. He says, revenue forecast by AI. I'm sorry, I have a bad throat today. A revenue forecast by AI, how effect of legislation in future would affect the business and its revenues factored in the AI system. Different question if you want to answer, or I can go on to the next one. Any idea, anyone?
I don't know whether I have an answer for that. Sandhya, you want to have a try?
Yes, so actually, forecast is an internal, and I don't know if I've understood the question properly, but forecast is an internal measure. But if we have to start extrapolating it and saying that, say, let's assume I use the revenue forecast in an AI. Using that, I'm giving a guidance to the street in terms of what our revenue is. Finally, it turns out to be different. Can we go back to the shareholders and blame the AI? We can't blame anybody except ourselves. So whether we use an AI, whether we use human intelligence, whether we use no intelligence, end of the day, the buck stops at the leader who goes and commits the number. So I think, see, AI, while there are many applications of AI, and there is this entire stream of ethical AI, and where if the AI is not used in an ethical way, it can influence. And I think all of us would have seen the Netflix documentary on the Great Hack. So there is a lot discussion on the potential of how much harm AI can do. But when it comes to financials, I think the buck stops at us as finance leaders, and whatever tool we use to provide any assertion on finance, we need to have the conviction to stand behind that number. So I don't know if that answers that question, but that would be my my take.
No, that is a fair idea and fair conviction what one can have once somebody is using AI. The basic inference which you draw is very important, but largely it should gel with the numbers which the street is looking at. At times, when you make certain other assertions which are not going well with the street, it may have a very adverse effect. And now you know that apart from forensic audit which is done on the data, where some issues are there, even there are questions arising wherein certain assertions which have been made have not fortified or not have happened in actuality. Any other persons or anybody else would like to add something? Madam, Gautam ji, anything? Bhavani ji?
From my side, I think I fully agree with what Sandhya said. Ultimately, what is AI? It's just a tool at our disposal to do a work which we are otherwise currently doing in an alternative manner, say assuming largely it is done through Excel modeling, where we are doing revenue predictions, where we are building assumptions. The just same way we are building assumptions in our Excel-based models, we are training AI intelligence through certain logics, certain assumptions, which it will work upon, learn, and improvise. So if our design is wrong, naturally the outcomes are going to be wrong. But as she rightly said, we can't put finger on anybody else but to ourselves, for all those mistakes. Because even in the current way of working, we can't say that Excel went wrong. So that's from my side.
I will just add. Yeah, I'll just add one final point. As the other two speakers were speaking, something occurred to me. See, obviously the SEBI regulations on unpublished price-sensitive information kind of change, really increases the requirement for governance of some of this information. And I think what in the past used to be finally in the head of somebody, right? Like you said, the leader who stands behind the number, it was probably finally in his head that, that number that I'm going to release to the public is probably now sitting in that AI, right? I think it changes the governance of now access to some of this information, because you are using technology to help you in that direction, becomes extremely important. So, double guarding of some of this information, because somebody can hack it, somebody who has access to it will know the number that is likely to be released as part of a press release or as part of your results, which should not be known to somebody in advance, right? I think that's probably one other angle I wanted to add with the use of technology to do forecasting.
Great. Thank you so much. All good things in life have to come to an end. Our interaction and this program has to come to an end. I am getting so many enormous messages from people. They are not happy. They are saying it is less time. We want the speakers again. We want to have more such sessions. So one thing I can say from the side of speakers to the participants, उर्दू में एक शेर है, जब भी जी चाहे बुला लेना मुझे मेहरबा, जब भी जी चाहे बुला लेना मुझे मेहरबा, मैं गया वक्त नहीं जो लौट के ना आऊंगा. I will give the English version which says that whenever you want you can call me. I have not time which will not come back. The speakers are all there. They are all very proud members of our fraternity and chartered accountants. So ladies and gentlemen, please don't be disheartened. I understand it's a good discussion. We'll have more such discussions in times to come. Your board is totally passionate about this, and we have to have so many programs. At least 2-3 months we'll run. The first topic of the day which we have decided today, technology as an enabler of internal audit. I want to thank you all for being here at this 2,000 people at this time on a Saturday evening is a great thing. We are truly honored. I am thankful to all the 3 speakers who have took out time from their busy schedule, time from their family, and are sitting here consistently for 3 hours. My salutations to you. Have a nice evening all. Bye. Namaskar.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good.